It's been some time since I've done a Walipini update. I've been in the valley the last couple of months, and so I have been less consistent with my weekly videos. But I woke up this morning and I could smell smoke really bad, so I came out to see what's going on, and I, of course, checked the internet as quickly as I could to find out where the fire was. This is not a Nevada wildfire. You can see we're less than 2 miles from the mountains, but we're just barely seeing them through the smoke. It's really, really bad throughout the entire basin here. And the wind was blowing hard all night, so I'm kind of assuming this is probably smoke from the Dixie Fire in California. That's the one that reports are coming saying that it's producing the most smoke as of right now. Of course, it changes almost hourly during fire season, so. But look at that, it's insane. The basin feels like a bowl, you know. You can see, you can't see any of the mountains to the east. This time of day, normally it's about 6:15 right now. This time of day, normally the sun is up. That sky is filled with pink and purple, golden. It's just smoky. So this kind of seasonal destruction from heat is actually one of the reasons why William feels so strongly the need to plant more trees. Because regardless of your stance on what you think causes global warming, and I have lots of people who like to debate with me the political ramifications of global warming. It's not really a political issue as much as it's it can be. Everything becomes political because politics is the relationship of all the elements of our life in conjunction with other people, right? But regardless of your political ideas or ideals, climate change is in essence a matter of personal comfort and environmental responsibility. And the climate has changed. I've lived long enough and heard stories long enough, studied it long enough to know that the climate is definitely changing. If you have a bad drought 1 year out of 10, then it's a bad drought. If you're experiencing a drought 8 or 9 years out of 10, that's climate change. It's not an exception. Right now, this year, according to records here in Nevada, we're experiencing the worst drought they've ever had in this area. Utah is experiencing one of the worst droughts they've ever had, with bodies of water, reservoirs and lakes falling below 55% of their normal water capacity. There's not much that an individual can do on a macro level to change global warming. Years ago, I had a great conversation with a man. It was actually the mayor of Mountain Village, Colorado, kind of the sister city to Telluride. And he talked about an important perspective with environmental thought. His perspective was that a lot of times environmental issues are sold wrong. We come at it from a place of fear, and fear can be a motivator for people, but it's not a place people want to live. And so they often stop supporting various environmental efforts because no one wants to live in fear. And so his point was that environmental responsibility needs to be sold differently to the American people and various other people worldwide. And that struck home with William and I, because we've always been, or at least we've always tried to be, environmentally responsible, conscientious, to be careful in how we take care of the earth, and to be people who recognize our responsibility to caring for the space that we inhabit. We've done this typically through gardens, through careful gardening methods. You know, William has always experimented, tried different things, and just in the last year and a half, 2 years, come back to his beginnings, which is how he learned to grow as a youth, which, you know, now it gets labeled a various name from time to time, but just using the compost, not tilling, just planting directly in your good compost. He's pulled things out and put things in recently. You can tell. So that desire to be responsible stewards, to be people who take care of the earth, has led William on his current trajectory and desire to plant trees. Because trees actually help to change the climate. And where climate change is something that we can impact for good on a micro level, on our local, small scale level, that's something we should do. Everyone can plant a tree. Cities can have more trees. Even out here where we are, where we're nowhere near a city, we live in an area that has traditionally had trees cut down, because for years the belief was that trees take so much water. They take so much water that they're going to deplete the water resources in an area. You know, and there's an element of truth. They will take the water. But what they don't say to finish off that statement, and what the truth actually is that they take the water when the water is available. And as soon as the water is no longer available, they exude it into the soil around them. That's why you can drive up the fields here towards the mountain, and there are areas where there are trees, where there's also green grass, where around them there's no grass at all, or what is there is dry and dead and dormant, waiting for next year's rains. So we can have a good impact on our local climate change by planting trees right here on the ranch. William has shared a little bit of this with his Patreon members, and he has about 700 acres that he and Jared Sorensen have blocked out that they're going to plant trees in, native trees, because you can see up here, none of these trees are irrigated that you see back here. There's peach tree willows up the mountain, there's aspens, this is a black willow, there's cottonwoods behind the greenhouse there, Lombardy poplars. And they do well in spite of the drought. They continue to grow. So we're going to start in the shallows, and we're going to create swales. Swale is an area where you essentially turn the ground into a sponge. So it collects the water, holds onto it. And then throughout the rest of the year, it's releasing that water into the area around it. There are places over in the aspen forest where, even though this is the worst drought, historically speaking, that we've experienced here, it's still green and lush because the swale is holding on to the water that we received over the winter. It's just a natural swale, but it's holding on to it and releasing it a little at a time. It's kind of like, Mother Nature's watering system. And we can have a positive influence like that. And so we're going to work on it. There's Williams compost piles, which also helps improve the quality of the land on a micro level. It's a matter of responsibility. I come and walk over and show you the rest of the garden. He's harvested the garlic and the onions. That's what was in those areas right there. Because we can't affect any real change on a worldwide scale. William and I, the Sorensens, people in our little valley, we're not going to change the use of cars in China or in New York City or anywhere else. And we're not utilizing that many vehicles here. But we can have an influence right here where we're at. Those blossoms, beautiful. We can plant gardens. We can plant trees. We can build swales. And instead of creating huge reservoirs, which, it's a method of storing water. But, prior to the vast expansion of civilization across North America, there were animals that were building swales. The beaver built swales all across the country. So, the country was wetter at one point. And so a lot of the influence, we blame it all on fossil fuel usage, and I'm not saying it doesn't have an impact, it does, but there are so many elements that have impacted climate change across the continent for, centuries, not just the few decades of the last century. The beavers are gone, except for a very few. So we have to be responsible and do a little bit of their work. Create swales like they did. So that's the current passion. I'm excited about it. Gardens and forests. To affect climate change so that this huge amount of smoke coming over from our friends in California who are on fire. Millions of acres now at this point burned. Lost homes and property damage. Loss of habitat, destruction of wildlife. It's such a huge problem that if you look at the huge problem, it can be discouraging, and I've heard a lot of people get very discouraged over it. But if you break it down into where you're standing and what you can do right where you are, it's not that hard to plant a tree. And another one and another one. I think we've added it up once upon a time. All told, in his life, Williams planted something like 5,000 or 6,000 trees, maybe more. I've helped him with it. So we're just gonna keep going. He's planning on planting 900 trees this year, I believe. He'll do 2,000 next year. We'll do our part. Green up the world.